So, here it is. Welcome you all to the session on active learning. Basically, for counselors, it is very important that the students are going to sit at home and read. They'll do some self-learning. But are they doing it in the right way? Are they actually thinking whether are they confident of what they have done, and do they know how to go ahead? And how as counselors you can help out to ensure that the students are working on their studies as planned and they are getting ready for their examinations. They are confident to give the examinations. So this is where the role of the counselor comes in. And the counselor has to keep on watching, monitoring and coaching the students. How do we coach them effectively? It's not just giving them the material, but we also need to handhold them throughout the entire training period. So how do we go about doing it? Here I have a few tips for you, a few examples of how you can incorporate active learning in your meetings with the students so that they can start working on doing better, being more confident and giving their exams successfully. So let's start with a session on what is called as season your teaching with active learning. So here is the first slide. Before I start with the session, let me briefly tell you who am I, how I got into this particular topic and why I thought it is interesting for everyone. So basically my talk is based on various workshops and sessions which I take in various colleges for teachers. I have some publications in this area of teaching and learning, and I feel that as students, teachers are equally responsible as much as students to see that the learning happens in the right way, in the right spirit. I've also done some publications in some journals and conferences in the area of active learning, and I have various interactions with academicians across various universities, and we all keep on talking something similar. What do we do to make students better? What is the difference between the students 10 years back and today? So, and some experimentation which we keep on doing in the classroom while I teach my subject. I want to know whether the students are doing well or not. How can they do better? So these are some of the things which has helped me to come here and conduct this session for you, which I've titled as Season Your Teaching with Active Learning. Now, basically from my side I said what I am. What about all of you? I'm sure all of you know you have a particular background, you have some qualifications, that's why you are counselors, you have an experience, whether it is 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. And with every year of experience which you put in, you start doing better and better. You start learning from the mistakes which you make, from the successes which you have, and then you decide how to go ahead. You also have a prerequisite. So when you become a counselor, you also have defined a particular set of things which you need to know technically in terms of the subject, and apart from that for teaching in terms of how to make the sessions effective. So here we'll start with the first topic, and before I go to the actual topic, let me put in 2 or 3 pictures here which basically signify how teaching and learning go together and what exactly is togetherness. And as I thought, what's the best thing we can think of togetherness? Let's learn from people around, let's learn from animals around. And I've got a very nice slide, very nice picture here which talks about how red ants, when they move from one particular tree leaf to the other leaf and they don't have any connection, how they all get together to build a bridge so that all of them can move together and ensure that all of them are at the next leaf and they are on their journey to the place where they want to go. There's another very nice example on the right hand side image which talks about the teamwork. So if you look at this example, you find you have a dog and you have a cat and you have one more small cat, and they all are helping each other to climb into the fridge and pick up the cake which everybody wants to eat together. And that is a very good example of teamwork. Similarly, when we talk about teaching and learning, don't you think there is teamwork? There needs to be teamwork among teachers and students together. So here I have the third picture which talks about togetherness among teachers and students. Unless we put one step ahead, unless we make students put one step ahead and bring them together, how do we ensure that teaching and learning will happen successfully, and how students will learn and how they will enjoy learning? And finally, it's all about enjoyment. If we do something by force, then it is not done with interest. it will happen, but there'll be no returns out of it. And if the same thing, we put in passion, we put in an interest in it, we may do it differently, then students want to come back and say, hey, let me learn more, let me do something else. And that's how the entire topic of teaching and learning becomes a journey of excitement, creativity, which is built by the students and teachers together. So it's being together which is important, and that's why I thought of putting up this slide for you. And I'm sure all of you agree that if we are not together, I teach, you decide whether to listen or not. Teaching may happen from my side, but learning is not going to happen. And learning will depend on the student. If the student is motivated, he will learn. But if the student is not motivated, he may say, okay, I'm not interested. You don't tell me what to do. But that is the way learning cannot happen. So it's very important to get all the students on the same page and ensure that they are ready to learn. You have created an interest in the subject, and once that interest is created, then the journey of learning is an excitement for everyone. But it's not easy. There are many things which have to be done from the teacher's side. Students are there, they have paid the fees, they have the material with them. Now you have to open a new world for them with lots of questions, with lots of things which they can relate to the outside world. With the internet, bring in things together and then see how they will change the way they look at a particular subject and start going on the journey of learning. So, what exactly I'm going to do in this particular topic? In the topic of active learning, I've got this particular module where, first of all, I'll talk about who are adult learners. Most of the students today are students, but they're also becoming adults. From teenagers, they move into adults. So who are these adult learners? The next one I'll talk about is what is active learning theory. Technically, what is it? Because unless you know the theory, you don't know how to apply it. After that, what is the need for active learning? I want to learn, but why should I go for active learning? Why don't I do it in the traditional way? What is different in it? And how do I go ahead? Then, what are the techniques which can be used for active learning? How do I go about it? What steps do I follow? What should I do? X or Y or Z? So, these things I'll be talking about in the session. What is going to be the impact of active learning? I learn, I introduce some new methods, but how will they impact the students? What will happen? Will they do better? How do I measure what they are going to do? So these points also have to be looked into while we talk about active learning. And we'll look at a very new and important concept which is being used abroad, which is called as flipped classroom. And flipped classroom is going to be very important specifically very relevant for distance learning, because that is where you can make the most benefit of active learning. And finally, while I go through from adult learning to the theory to active learning and coming to flipped classroom, then I'll go get into the summary and we'll quickly recap whatever topics we have covered in the session today. So before I start with the topic, let's have a background, a few questions you can ask yourself and have a look at this. You can think about it. It's not what you want to teach, it's what they want to learn. See the sentence, what it means. It's not what I want to teach. I cannot teach what I want because there is no desire here. I want to teach is fine. What I want to teach is not defined by me. It is defined by what the students want to learn. And that's where a small difference comes in. We as teachers, we have to accept that there is a particular syllabus, there are students in front. You need to deliver the syllabus in the way the students want it, not in the way you want it. Because the way you want it may not be what the students want, and that is where they will not come together. So as I talked earlier about togetherness, here again it comes in. So it's not what you teach, but it's what they will learn. Now, getting into the topic of normally, when we talk to the students, we say it's like a lecture mode. I keep on talking, students keep on listening. But lecturing has a few advantages and disadvantages. Let's think about this before we move into the topic of active learning. So when we talk about this lecturing, we say that I know that I have got a 1 hour lecture today. So students are going to come and sit in the class. Students will decide their mental capability. their awareness, their interest in the subject, and then they'll sit in the classroom. But while they're sitting in the classroom, when I come into the class, I'm prepared that this particular topic I'm going to teach, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4 topics, and I'm going to take 15 minutes for one, maybe 20 minutes for the other one, and so on. So I plan my lecture properly, I decide the topics to take, and I come to the class and I start talking. I'm talking, but I'm not sure whether the students are listening or not. There's no guarantee. That's where lecturing makes a small difference. Making the students listen to you, making the students think about what you say, and go back to the home, read again, learn again, and come back the next time, is where active learning should come in. So lecturing is not the only solution in the class. Lecturing has its benefits, that at least something they will learn and go. But even lecturing can be modified slightly with what is called as active learning. And active learning is going to make a big difference in the classroom when you have students with you and you want to ensure that they are going to learn. So we look at 2 questions over here. One is, you see whether you agree with this statement or not. The more I talk, the student learning is dash. What is happening to the students? I keep on talking to you, and let me tell you like this, if you were sitting in front and listening to me continuously, maybe after 10 minutes you're going to slightly come out of the topic, start thinking something else. You have already drifted from this topic. I have not been able to catch you and make you listen to me, make you think about something which I want you to do. So learning is not happening properly. That's a problem. Also, if I look at this statement again, the more I keep on talking, the students who are sitting in front of me, their learning is going to keep on decreasing. Slowly over a period of time, concentration goes, they will start drooping off, coming out of the topic, thinking something else. Somebody may think of what he wants to do in the evening. Some student may think, okay, let me go for a movie. What am I planning on Saturday? Which friends I want to meet today? Which other subject I have to study? How do I do that? Somebody may sit there and do their own assignment in the class behind. Somebody may pick up their mobile and they'll start, doing some SMS or something else on the mobile. So the class is going to divert the students from the teaching you are doing and to the learning which is happening from the student side. So that's not right. So just lecturing, the more I talk, there's a problem. The more students will slowly droop out of the class, and that is not going to lead into learning being effective. So getting back to another sentence, as the lecture continues, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours, I keep on talking. As the lecture continues, retention is going to decrease. I'm not going to remember what I said 1 hour back. So I ask you a question, I finish 1 hour of the lecture and I ask you a question. What did you, do you remember what I spoke in the first 10 minutes? People are going to forget. Can you answer this particular question which was explained to you in the first half an hour? After 1 hour, it is not going to be remembered. So retention also is a problem. And what is learning all about? Learning is all about making students retain the concepts which you have explained to them earlier. And when you say retain the concepts, they should answer in their own words with whatever they have understood. If a particular concept is taught and they retain it later, then they'll also retain it for the exams, and that is where learning has happened. But if you explain something and the student is going to forget it later, how will learning happen? How will retention happen? And what does he have to do? He has to go back, again read at home and keep on learning, or keep on reading again and again. That is rote learning. But if in the exam a question is modified, the student gets stuck up, he cannot answer because he has never thought about it. So there's a problem. So the more I talk, there's a problem. The more I talk, retention also decreases. So it's very important to understand that just lecturing is not enough in the classroom. We have to have a different way of looking at things. And here, to understand the students of today, every 2-3 years, the way the students have their lifestyle is changing. The way the students study is changing. If the students are changing, how can I expect that I will teach my way and whatever I taught maybe 2 years back, 5 years back, it's going to work now? So it's different. So we have to cater to the audience in front, and the audience in front is the students of today, not the students of the age what I was when I was a student. It's different. So I need to make a change in the way I do things, because I need to understand the students first and then decide the method to use to teach the topic which is given in the syllabus. And that's plain and clear. So let's look at that first a very small video. We'll look at a short video and then we'll move into the topic of active learning. So here is a video which talks very briefly about active learning. Okay, so how was the video? It talked about various important concepts. Look at the learners of today. They are digital learners. Means they want to learn from the digital medium. If you ask them that, okay, listen to me, and you're just going to listen to me and learn from me, it's not going to work. They don't want it. So what are the small points which came out from this video? Today's learners are very comfortable using emails, blogs, wikis. What about the teachers? Are we comfortable using them? Don't you think we should be comfortable using such a medium which students are using? And then students and teachers, when they interact with each other, will feel at home. So you need to be comfortable using the tools and the media which students use today. That's one point. The second point, what do these digital learners say? Give me something, let me think, let me analyze, let me create something. Don't tell me, listen to me. Let me go beyond, let me evaluate something, let me apply something. So give me freedom to do something on my own. And active learning, which I'm going to talk about today, points out just the various mechanisms which is going to make students think, create, analyze, evaluate. And that's where the way students will learn is going to change. If you have a point and say that yes, I want to look at active learning, I want to introduce that in my classroom and want to make teaching and learning better, engage the students, make them think, make them create, make them evaluate, and make them apply the concepts which they listen. So you can say that a particular topic which you want to teach in a particular day, you speak a little, and for the remaining part you may have a discussion, you may have some other modes by which you make the student create, think, apply, analyze, evaluate. And when we make students do something, they are interested, they get into the topic, and they will understand the topic. If something is not understood, they'll come back and they'll ask you a question. That is where the teacher's role comes in. The teacher is responsible for ensuring that whatever the student has not understood, those points can be made clear, not just for one student, but for the remaining students who are available here. And then learning becomes effective. Then students start enjoying what they're doing. They want to come back to your classroom. They want to pick up homework from you, go back at home, get engrossed in it, work day and night, and do it on their own instead of picking up something from somebody. If students get something different to do, then an interest is kindled in them, and they would like to come back and then say, I enjoyed what I did, and give me something more. And students want something. Students' mind is free. They're not pressured with things around, so they don't mind doing something different. But just listening is not going to stop them from doing something different. So if you just give them just explain in the class and stop at that point, then students will think of what else to do, and then they start getting into unwanted things which may not make them learn the concepts which you have taught. So they may go keep on chatting with their friends, then there is Facebooking, there is WhatsApping, there is blogging and whatnot on the internet, and go and play, go and do this, do that. But those things are not there for recapping the topic which you do. Those things which they do unwanted, maybe for some time is okay, but they cannot do it for the whole day. So engage them is the message which I want to give in from this particular video. Now getting into the actual topic for today. So let's look at this. We start with this topic in the slide which talks about adult learners. What are adult learners? Any student beyond 15, 16 starts growing from teenage to adult. And as students grow from teenage to adults, there are hormonal changes among boys and girls. The way they start thinking, they become a little mature. They don't want to listen to somebody. So these are on the habit side. But as students, what happens? They are autonomous and they are self-directed. They are autonomous means they want to think on their own. They will tell you, okay, you leave it to me, I'll manage it. Don't tell me what to do. Don't tell me how to do it. You tell me the task, I'll do it on my own. So they want to do it themselves. They want to be independent. Then they want to be self-directed. They don't want somebody to come and tell them how to go about it. And if we can respect that, and if we give them tasks in that area, then adults will learn better. The second point of view, which is very important, is with age we gain experience, we gain knowledge. And as students start growing, every year, every 6 months, every month, students are going to gain knowledge. Students are also going to have their own experiences. And their own life experiences will make them decide how to go ahead in the future. So they form their own principles, they form their own values from the environment around, that is the society, the family and the friends. And with this life experiences and knowledge, they will decide how they want to lead their life and how they want to learn from you. So the choice of learning is not with you as a teacher, it is with the students. So the students will decide how they want to learn from you. If you are able to open a good relationship with the student, then he may decide or he may think of coming and taking help from you, but you will have to leave him to be autonomous and self-directed. So this is very important. The third point over here, when we talk about adult learners, is students are goal-oriented. Adults as students are goal-oriented. They have their own goals. They know what they want to do today, tomorrow, 6 months down, after 5 years. They know what they want to do. If we can twist our learning and teaching to ensure that their goal is matching with our teaching goal, then you can take students on your teaching learning journey and make them learn from you. The next point when we talk about adult learners is that they are relevancy oriented. Means what? They want to know everything should be relevant to them. It should pertain to them. So for example, if something is not pertaining to them, why should I do it? They will not get interested into something which they find is not relevant or applicable to them. So sometimes, if you take a subject like mathematics and you ask the students, okay, I'm going to teach you maths. I'll start my topic and you'll have to learn from me. The first thing the student has in his mind is, why should I learn maths? How is it going to be useful for me? Where will I use it in my life? Where will I use it in the next subject which I'm going to learn? So the question is not the subject. The question is where it is going to be useful. And if in your first lectures, in the first interactions that you have with the students, you can put a point over here and say, okay, I'm going to teach this particular subject and it is relevant in this form to you in the next subjects and in the future. And then you start with the subject, and then the whole way of looking at this particular subject, students will make a change and they'll say, okay, I know it is useful, so I'll have to do it. So you need to connect to these goals before you start making students learn and before you start teaching. So you need to put the goals in such a way that it matches with their goals. You need to make the topic relevant to them. The subject also should be made relevant to them. And the next point is, it should be practical oriented. So the subject which you want to teach and you say, okay, this is what it is. Students can't imagine it. Students cannot do something practically with it. They cannot relate it. Then what's the point? So if they have not connected it somewhere, they have not visualized it somewhere, why do they feel like learning the topic? So you are going to speak, they will listen, they will just hear, they will not listen. So they have heard something, they'll go out of the class and they'll forget it. That's it. So it's not fair. So you have spent your time, but it is not made effective. So after relevancy, after goal oriented, the other part of adult learners is that you need to see that this topic is practical in nature. The subject may not be practical, but if you have a particular topic, you try to give them some live examples where it is being used, so they are able to relate it over there. And the last and the most important part, adult learners are actually individuals, and as they are growing up, they want people around to give them respect. If you can ensure that you give them respect in the way you interact with them, the way they start coming back to you and listening to you is going to change. So there are some very important concepts when I talk about adult learning, which is going to impact in the way your teaching is taken by the students and students have learned from you. They may listen to you, but learning from you is a different story. So if I try to recap the main points of adult learning again, because you need to understand that these are the main concepts which is going to bind the students to you, not just for the subject learning, but also for lifetime. And whenever they have any small doubt, they will come back to you and they will talk to you. And when somebody talks, then they do something more because they listen to you and they take your advice. And teaching and learning is all about taking your experience and knowledge and ensuring that students also pick up something from there. So, if you look at the topics in terms of adult learning again, I would like to recap from the slide again. So, adult learners are basically autonomous and self-directed. They have a foundation of their life experiences and knowledge. They are goal-oriented. They are relevancy-oriented. They are practical in nature, and they need to have been shown respect. Now, if with your entire process of teaching learning from day one, if you follow these particular points, they are going to go a long way in terms of teaching and learning. So when we talk about learners, I am not saying just a student, it is a learner. What is the difference between a student and a learner? A student is going to come to the class and listen to you. He may or may not understand. A learner, he is going to learn. You have to ensure that he learns. And what is he supposed to learn? The assigned subjects for which he has registered for the course. And as a counselor and as a teacher, you are assigned the task of a particular subject to be taught to that person, and he will learn it and he will do well in the exams. And that is the entire idea of our teaching learning process. So after understanding adult learners, let's look at what is learning. Learning is a process where small modifications are made in your brain so that some new knowledge comes in and it is remembered for later. The knowledge is retained. You start thinking, you start applying it somewhere, you start using the knowledge later. Who has to use the knowledge later? It is the students. So once you teach, after that the students are going to learn, and then whenever they learn the other subjects, they are going to use this subject to understand the other subject better. And that's how the whole curriculum is taught. And after the student finishes all these subjects together and he goes out into the world, he's going to use the bundle of all this knowledge together, of all the subjects which all of you have taught, and use them in their everyday life. Technically, in terms of the subject which they are teaching, and as a person, the values which you have given them. For example, in the earlier topic, I just told you that adult learners, you need to respect them. You respect them, they will start respecting other people. So values and learning both go hand in hand, and while you are teaching them the subject, values are also taught parallelly with your subject, and that's how the learning journey goes on. So when we talk about a learner, basically a student becomes a learner when he starts picking up knowledge from you, understanding it, using it to do something different, creating or evaluating something, and moving ahead to understand the next topic based on the earlier topic which is learnt. And when we talk about a learner, basically, a learner can be categorized into two ways of learning. One is called as active learning, and the second is called as passive learning. What exactly is this? It's shown in the slide, with a small bucket on the top. So if you can look at the slide over here, at the bottom I have said that you have a student here who is having a window on the top, and he has got a window which is filled with knowledge, which is called as passive learning. And the other one is an active learner. And if you see a very small point in the first diagram, in the passive learner's diagram, a passive learner's bucket has got in the brain a small tap through which the knowledge which you start putting inside is going to slowly come out. And because this knowledge doesn't remain inside in the passive learner's brain, he forgets what you have told him, he is not interested, and he is a happy-go-lucky character. So he is a student, but he is not a learner, because learning has never happened, because all the knowledge has slowly come out from the tap. At different intervals of time, the knowledge is out and nothing is there in the brain. If you look at the active learner, yes, the bucket is filled up with all the knowledge which comes in. The bucket gets filled up, and he is happy and he ensures that no knowledge is leaking from the tap. There is no tap anyway, so an active learner doesn't have a tap. Now, the job of the teacher and the counselor is to move a student from passive learning to active learning in such a way that he will not forget whatever is taught to him. So that's the basic idea of active learning. You have to ensure that there is no tap where the knowledge from the brain of the active learner is going to leak out, drop by drop, and he will forget everything. So how do you ensure this? And that's not a difficult part. It's a way of doing it differently. So I can't teach in the way I'm teaching just like that, okay? Okay, I teach and you forget it. I allow you to forget it. It doesn't work. I have to ensure that you will never forget whatever I'm going to tell you. So at this particular point, I'll just take a minute and again I'll ask you to take a notepad and just try to write down what are the basic concepts of adult learners. Just take a minute and I'm sure all of you will be able to at least remember 3 points out of what we had written down. Once you write down and come back, I'll just quickly recap again. What are the basic features of active learners? So we had already talked about earlier, autonomous, self-directed, and I'll show the PPT again. So if you recap again, unless you have the main points in front and recap, do not move ahead with the next topic. Because if it is not learned, then the next topic becomes a little difficult to understand and learn. So autonomous, self-directed, foundation of life experiences and knowledge, goal-oriented, relevancy-oriented, practical, and need to be shown respect. I'm sure each of you would have at least written down 3 or 4 points out of this list of features. And after that, I talked to you about the active learner and the passive learner. Passive learner has got a tap where the knowledge slowly leaks out. So remember this. You have to ensure that you don't have a tap there for an active learner and you don't allow the knowledge to leak out. That's the job of a teacher. And that's where active learning comes in, and that's where techniques of making learning active becomes important. You don't have to make the student active. You have to make the activities in such a way that the entire learning process becomes active in nature. So if you look at the concept of basically learning is simple. I go on speaking and you will listen to me. But what is genuine learning? Genuine learning basically consists of 3 important parts of receiving the information. So whatever information is received is converted into what is called as at the lowermost level explain. I explain the concept to you, then I recap it. I will revise it again. When I revise it, you will also revise it in your mind. You may remember something, you may forget something, but it is revised again. And then the third part is I test it. Now, exactly these are the steps which I followed in the adult learners what I talked about. I explained you the concepts first, then I again showed you the slide and I again listed out all the concepts. I recapped it. So I explained, I recapped. And after that I asked you that okay, take a minute, pause the video and sit with a notepad and write down what are the main features of adult learners. You did that. Okay, you try to recollect. So you see how many did you recollect? That tells you how much you have learnt. So that is the testing phase. So when you have the testing phase, basically you try to go back to your mind and ask, okay, what did I learn? What did I learn? Let me think. So 1 point, 2 point, 3rd point, 4th point. At least something you will remember. So unless explanation and recap is followed by testing, you don't know whether the learner has learnt or not. But if you do testing, the student has actually remembered the particular point and will try to put it on paper, means he will never forget it later. So this was the basic concept which I talked about, is genuine learning, where any information which is received by the student from the teacher is converted into explain, recap and test. And we can't do this process at the end of the lecture, because within a particular lecture, something which was taken in the first part is forgotten after some time. And the student will remember only the last 15-20 minutes. So there is no way that we should say that okay, and I'll have some point in the start, I will only recap in the end. It will not work. So what you need to do is, whenever you have an important concept, now for me in this particular session, adult learners was an important concept which I want you to remember it later. So I divided this, I took up this adult learner concept and I talked about test, explain, recap and test. So in that 3-part cycle I explained the concept. Only if this is done properly, only then I move to the next topic. Now, what does this cycle indicate? Because I'm ensuring that you learn this particular topic and I move to the next topic, I have finished one small part of it, which is just 5 to 10 minutes. But it is remembered by everybody. It may not be remembered completely, but at least 80%, 60% will be remembered. Now, at the end of the lecture, when the whole concept is over, again if I recap, at least the students will be able to come back and say at least 3 to 4 points out of say 7. That's good. Now when the student goes back home, if you give them some small assignment, they're going to remember everything later. And they'll be able to revise the whole thing and they'll be able to do well because they'll be confident that they had understood at least 50% earlier. So that is the actual concept of genuine learning. So basically, how do we define learning? So there was a very nice quote by Dale Carnegie which I wanted to share with all of you. Learning is an active process. We learn by doing. Only knowledge that is used sticks in your mind. You know what I did earlier? Now I have put this PPT with the points of here like explain and recap. Explain and recap was what I did. But testing is where the teachers got involved. You know, I asked you a question. Can you write on the notepad? Is where I made you use the knowledge which was learnt earlier. So a small test which I asked you to give, there were no marks for it. But I asked you that, okay, write down what you remember. So the point if you go back here is, learning is an active process. We can learn by doing. We don't learn by listening only. We learn by doing. So I have to make you do something out of it. And in the example earlier, I asked you to write down or give a small test. The point here is, only knowledge that is used is going to stick in your mind. Nothing else sticks in your mind. So it is very important to remember that you need to make the student listen to you and then make him use that knowledge somewhere. And if he uses it once or twice, then it will stick in his mind. He will never forget it. That means there will be no tap, there will be no leakage, and the knowledge which is given to the student, it will be in his brain. And that's what you want. And that's what you will achieve. So that's all about genuine learning. Now let's go a little further and talk about this. When learning is active, students do most of the work. See the difference in what I'm talking about now? When learning is active, so when I want the learning to be active, I'm not going to talk much. I want the students to do work. Means I need to have some sort of different activities to make the student think, apply whatever knowledge which I'm giving to him. So I need to start having different activities designed for every class, for every topic, so that students start getting involved in the work. And if you remember the video we talked about earlier, so in the video the students said, engage me. Engage me means what? Make me think, make me work. And this sentence also means the same thing. Make me work, give me something to do, make me think, make me apply something, educate me in today's world, not as you were taught. I'm a digital learner. Make me do something, make me think, make me answer questions in today's way. Allow me to use the internet, allow me to make the best of what is available. You also learn that and let me also learn from there. You help me what I don't know, but don't do everything for me. And as teachers, we need to be very careful of keeping this in mind, that we should be able to help them around, make them think, not do everything for them. And it tallies very well with this particular sentence which is here, that when learning is active, students do most of the work. And the point is, when they do most of the work, they feel good about it. Most of them will do, some of them may not be able to do. That's where the teacher's role comes in. You help them. Help them means not do their work, but coach them. Give them some hints. Help them where they have a doubt. And then they will be able to do that work. But the more you make the students work, the better they will learn. So let me take this sentence and put it in a very different way. When learning is active, students do most of the work. So can I say like this, that I come to the class and I say, okay, this is a particular topic today. Now you start writing on your own. It's not right. I can't ask them to do on their own directly. So the point is, I need to give them a topic, give them some small inputs. some basic concepts. Ensure that they have understood those concepts. And after that, give them some exercises which will recap and which will test them. So explanation has to be given, but explanation cannot be only explanation for 1 hour or 2 hours. So the entire lecture of say 1 hour, if you have a lecture of say 1 hour 60 minutes, you divide it into small parts of explanations, in between recap and test, recap and test. Now how do you do recap? How do you do test? That can change. And when different things are done in the class, students get interested. And students don't know what's going to happen next, so they feel good. And they'll keep on looking out for, guessing what will happen in the class, how will you teach today, what you are going to do today. And that's how the learning will go ahead. So I just remember a small incident, about 15 years back when I was teaching one subject of microprocessors. I used to have various activities in the class. And one of the students came in the class, and I just was walking around the class and I started talking to her. So how are you and what's going on? So she said, I come to your class because I don't know how you are going to teach the topic today. Then I didn't realize that. So I asked her, what do you mean by this? Said, no, you have told us that tomorrow I'm going to take this topic, but you have not told how you are going to take it. So someday I have some case study, someday I have a discussion, someday I ask them to bring their books, and then I ask some small open book test. Someday I have a small quiz. Someday I ask them to do a role play. And they don't know what will be done the next day. So that every time something is different. So if you're not monotonous in nature, then students want to come to your class because they want to know, they want to do something different, and they know that the teacher is going to give them something different. So this is another point which we should keep in mind. Try to be different. You cannot be the same every day. So for example, you find in some movies also that the teacher or otherwise also that the teacher comes in the same way. He'll keep the book here, he'll start teaching, he'll start writing on the board. Exactly in the same way, he'll start the class with the same words, he'll end the class with the same words. It's monotonous. And students have already said, okay, now he's going to do this, next he's going to do this, this is how he's going to talk. So routine things are not appreciated. Routine things, students lose interest. And we need to be different, we need to be creative, and we need to make students work. That's a basic idea of talking about active learning. And we have to ensure that there is no tap in the student's brain, and the tap will now not there, nor will it ever leak. So let's get into this topic again further. We talk about now active learning theory. Now there's a small triangle here which talks about different activities on the left hand side, and I'll just slowly go through them. I'll compare two things, so something on the left hand side and something on the right hand side. So on the top what we said is people generally remember. What are the activities which will make people remember? So we have learning activities there, and if they remember something, what can they do? So people are able to, or the learning outcomes. And I'm sure that whenever you conduct a particular session or when you have a particular chapter to be taught, every chapter has got objectives and the chapter has got outcomes. So if I'm going to learn this particular topics, this is what I'll be able to do. So you have learning activities on one side and the learning outcomes on the other side. So for example, whenever a student is going to read on his own, he will only remember 10% of what he reads. Now, if he has heard something in the class, while you spoke to him in the class, you interacted with him, he will remember only 20% of what he has heard. That's it. So you can imagine that if the student is going to read on his own, there's no guarantee that he'll remember more than 10%. And if he's going to hear you in the classroom, he will still not remember more than 20%. That's it. Now, what can he do with this 10 and 20% of remembering? He can define something, he can list something, he can describe something, he can explain something. That's it. So, for example, in the concept of adult learners which I explained to you in the starting, you can define them, you can list them, that's it you can do. So, you read those goals on you read the adult learner points on the PPT, you listened to what I said. You could remember only 10 plus 20, that is 30%. And with this, you can only define, list, describe and explain. That's it. You have not understood how you can actually apply it. The next part is, if they see something, so I am showing you this, but I showed you that active learning image, passive learning with the bucket on the head. So 30% of what you see of that particular topic, you are going to remember because it's an image. If you see something and hear something together, so while you were looking at the image, I was also talking about the tap and I was talking about the bucket. So you heard me and you saw that image together. With this, you can remember about 50% of what is explained to you. And what you see and what is heard together, mix up. This particular learning is going to only demonstrate, you can apply it or you can practice it. So because you saw the image and all, you know that yes, whenever knowledge is coming in the brain, you should avoid the bucket. You should avoid having a tap. Bucket will be filled, but there should be no tap, there should be no leakage. So that's it. You can, learning happens only up to 50%. So you can demonstrate something, you can apply something, you can practice something. This is true not only for this teaching learning subject, but it is also true for any other subject. And then, suppose if we make the students say something and write it down. So in the example which I gave you, I asked you that, okay, can you write on a notepad the different features of adult learners? You wrote down on your own by remembering. When you remember something and write it back later, you learn. Learning and remembering goes to 70%. It's important. You need to go from lower to higher in the triangle. And after that, if I make you do something on your own, then the learning will go to more than 90%. So see the difference in the way learning is changing from only listening to the teacher or only showing the image or doing a mix of the two or making you practice something on your own or making you say something. When I ask you to repeat something, learning is better. When you read, it is the minimum. So the learning process and how much you remember depends on the type of senses which are being used by of the brain. It is only see, it is hear, it is think or what. And a mix of those is going to decide how a student is going to learn. Now, if a student is going to see and say and write something on his own, he is going to think about the concept. In that case, the student is able to analyze something, define something new, he will be able to evaluate something and he will be able to create something new. So, active learning basically forms the lower part of this particular triangle and the passive learning is the upper part of the triangle. In passive learning, the point is, I ask the students to pick up a book and read on their own. I ask them to listen to me. That is passive learning. I show them something on the screen and I talk with it is passive learning. I have not made them think. But with activities where I say, okay, now tell me something what you have understood in your own words. Write down what you have understood. Can you apply it somewhere? Can you design something new and give me? There passive learning, active learning comes in and passive learning goes out. So the point over here is you have to have different methods where you make the student do something and you do less. But they will not do something unless you have given them something. So in the first step, you give them some inputs, then you make them do something together and then you again give them some inputs. That's how you will move from passive learning into active learning. And that's the basic topic which we are going to talk about and move further into. So looking into the particular triangle again once more, if you look at this slide and look at the triangle again, we said that people generally remember with learning activities and the learning outcomes will decide what they can do. And if you only listen or if you only read, then you are in the active or passive learning mode. But when you do something on your own, you go into the active learning mode. So can I get the slide again over here? So just see if you imagine this again. It's very important to make the students move from just listing something, describing something, to demonstrating or practicing something and analyze, define and create something. So the activities which we design in the classroom after we explain a particular topic have to be in the area of the blue part, that is analyze, define, create and evaluate. And if you try to recollect the video which I showed you earlier, the same words were used over there. The students have been saying, let me create, let me think, let me analyze, let me evaluate, let me apply it. Don't do it for me, let me do it myself. Engage me. So to make students learn, we have to engage them, and the engagement happens in the lower part of the triangle and not in the upper part of the triangle. And if you go back to the left hand side and look at the activities there, 70% of what they say and write and 90% of what they do. So we have to see how to make the students do something, say something and write something. And a mix of all these three together will be used to carry out the active learning process. So now we look at the theory of what is active learning. It is basically an activity which is going to engage the student in doing something besides listening and taking notes. Now you go back to that, remember that triangle again? In the triangle it was said, read and hear. So here what does it say? You do some activity which is different from just listening and taking notes. The next point is, make students learn and apply the course material to do something different. If you make the students do something different, activity is called as an active learning activity. And the next part is very important. You make the students to start talking or listening to one another, writing, reading or reflecting individually. So you give them something to think. You give them something to, some question which they have to discuss in a group. You give them something to think and write the answer on their own. It's not a standard answer. Then it is active learning. And it tallies well with where we said earlier in the triangle that you make the student not read on his own, but you make the student think, you make the student write down something in his own words. And then you make the student do something on his own. That's where active learning comes in. With active learning, another common term used outside in the terms of teaching methods is called as collaborative learning. It is a subset of active learning. So what does it say basically? Engage the students in interacting with one another. Now if you recollect the triangle again, in the triangle we had said that we should be able to make them say and write. Say to whom? Not to me. Say to each other. So say and write and think and do something. So here we engage the students by interacting with one another. We give them some task where they have to discuss with each other and then write down the answer. There is no single answer here. After collaborative learning, there is one more type of learning which is called as cooperative learning. Cooperative learning is a subset of collaborative learning where students will interact with one another and will do a specific set of structured activities. Say for example, there is a specific question given where all of them have to sit and write together. Is cooperative learning, they help each other to answer the doubts. Collaborative learning is you give them a point, you give them a small subtopic and they will start discussing it. They will try to think of the applications of that topic. They will try to think of what to do. Then it is collaborative learning. So for example, I give a particular topic and say that okay, on this particular topic, why don't you make your own project? Come out with a problem and design a project for it. That is collaborative learning. But I give a particular question and I say that okay, the topic today is how do students study? It's a very common topic. So for this particular topic, the students will interact with each other and they'll write down how they study. So that becomes cooperative learning. So they understand how they study. And I don't think we can give that question to them because, that's just telling them that you just write down what you know. So there's not much learning happening over here. But suppose if I said a question could be like, ask the students to sit in the groups and discuss and say, how I want to learn. Then many new ideas will come from them. And some of them would be that, don't tell me everything, make me do something, engage me. So those thoughts are what is going to come from the students also. And I'm sure I can give you this particular example. You can go and try it out. Go to the class on the first day and sit with them for 10 minutes and tell them. Just take 10 minutes, 5 minutes in your small groups, sit down and write down this answer to this question. What are the different ways in which you want to be taught? And let me tell you, most of them are going to say, teach less, give us more work, we will do the work. We will do it in time and make us create interest in the subject. And if you can do that, then the whole journey goes in a different way. So, we looked at what is active learning. So, activities which are in the lower part of the triangle. So, if you go back to that triangle and just quickly recap again, activities in the lower part of the triangle where you make the students say and write something on their own and you make them do something on their own. There, that is where analysis, definitions, creation and evaluation will come in, and that is where active learning is going to happen. And that's it. And that is where learning is maximum and remembering will be maximum. Because if you look at the table, it says 70% and 90%. And that is where learning will be there. So in active learning, the activities in the lower part of the triangle is what the teacher should be focusing on. That's it. No need to just keep on talking and make the students listen to you. So, after understanding the actual definition of active learning, which says, engage the students in doing something beyond listening and taking notes. Make them do something different. That is the basic idea of active learning. Why do we need it? I've been taking various examples earlier where I said that active learning is required. Why? I can go to the class, I can talk, students will finish the lecture, the time gets over, I go out of the class, the students will go out of the class, and the tap is opened, all the knowledge leaks out. That's it. So passive learning happened. I did my job, but the students did not, I did not ensure that the students learnt. So I did only part of the job by just giving the information. It has not gone into the bucket. It went, it came out. It has not remained there. If I don't do that, then the entire objective of teaching process is nullified. So there is a need for active learning, and if you do not have active learning, then the objective of teaching is not achieved. You may feel it is achieved, but actually in spirit it is not achieved. So the point of view in active learning is given by Confucius right in 400 BC, which is before Christ. What did he say? What I hear, I forget. What I see, I remember. What I do, I understand. And there are many things in literature in the past days which all comes back and says, please make students do something on their own, make them think, don't do things for them. So, don't just make them listen to you, don't just make them see, but make them do. After that, this was 400 BC. Then another researcher in the teaching methods, Silberman, in 1996, he elaborated it and he said, what I hear I forget, what I hear and see, I remember a little. What I hear, see and ask questions or about or discuss with someone else, I begin to understand. You see the difference? I give a question to the class, as I told you earlier, and I ask them to think. They will begin to understand a little. What I hear, I see, I discuss and do, I acquire knowledge and skill. So the moment I make a student do something on his own, then he will start acquiring that particular knowledge and the particular skill. And what I teach to another, I master. And this is the best part of the entire process. So, is it possible that, if a particular topic is taught to all the students and then I ask the students, okay, now 10 minutes is left, which is the topic which is not understood? And maybe some 15 people will raise their hands and they'll say, no, this last topic, it was very difficult, I could not understand it. So, I ask the other students in the class, so who has understood the topic completely? Maybe 15 people will raise their hands, again 10, 15, whatever. So then I'll ask them to make pairs of the people who know the topic, who don't know the topic. They will come together, they will sit together for the next 10 minutes and the one who knows will explain to the other one. And let me tell you that student who has explained the topic to the other one will never forget. Now the point is, I also could have taught it again. When I would have taught the topic again in the class in the next 10 minutes, the people would have understood, were already knowing the topic, they'll find it boring. And they'll say, why am I sitting in the class? So you are wasting that student's 10 minutes, which is not required. So he wastes his time in the class and he will feel upset about it. He said 10 minutes is wasted. So instead of you revising it in the class, you can give it as a small activity to the students who have understood, to explain it to those who have not understood, by making small one-to-one groups. And the moment they finish, you see the happiness on their face that they could explain it to the other one, and they will never forget it. And even the other person who heard, he will also not forget because he has heard him. And after that, you can ask people, have you understood? And ask some questions on that and test them. And let me tell you, at least 70 to 80% of them would have understood from the students on their own. So, if you go back to this particular theory of Silberman, who said in 1996 that what I hear I forget, what I hear and see I remember a little, what I hear, see and ask questions or discuss. So the third part again is a little more important. I don't just teach, I need to ask lots of questions in the class. I also need to give them opportunity to discuss with among themselves. And apart from that, I hear, I see, I ask questions, I ask them to discuss. And beyond that, I make them do something. So I give them a small topic and say, on this particular topic, why don't you go on the internet and find out information and get back? Maybe it's just a one page. So when I ask them to do something about it, they will acquire knowledge and skill. And then the last part, which is very important and which actually tops the entire teaching learning process, where it says that I taught you, you didn't understand a small part of it, let somebody else teach you. Because that other person will become little stronger and he will always master it. So that's how the entire process of teaching and learning should go, where you make the students also get involved and make them work, instead of you doing all the work for the entire 1 hour and in every lecture. So that's where that active-passive cone of learning comes in, and I thought of putting this here in a very different way. The same cone is put little differently here, where it says reading 10%, watching a video or watching a picture or a visual, or watching a demonstration. You know, normally for some experiments you can actually show a demonstration. Say, a very simple example I could take is, of the TV shows where they talk about cooking. It is possible that I can just put the recipe on the screen and you read it. It's simple. But how much of that will you remember later? The second method is, just show them the ingredients and show them the cooked part. It's a visual. Not enough. If you actually do it and tell them, okay, now this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the whole thing step by step, and you see it and then you can remember it. So as you move from just telling or making them see something or a visual and make them actually give a demonstration, learning will increase. That is still, but you have not made me do it. Okay, I watched it on screen. I saw the recipe being cooked. I saw that the people on the TV, they are sitting and eating together. So they did it. But I have not done anything. I have just watched. So I am a passive learner. But if the moment he says, okay, now I am finishing, now you go back and practice it. You do it on your own. You discuss it and you do it on your own. Then remembering goes on increasing. So that's where the boundary is there for what is called as active learning and passive learning. So the active learning is below that. The moment I get engaged in learning is where active learning will start, and that's how the cone of learning is defined. And unless you move into active learning, there is no use of teaching because the student has not learnt. What is he going to do later? When he goes back home, he may not understand many things. During the exams, before the exams, he will not be able to do much. On the day of the exam also, he may not do well. And finally, he has not performed well. So, unless you, from the start, if you start getting into and involving him and making him work, you have made him do the work. He has got into that habit, he has learnt, and he has become more and more confident that he knows some topics. So in the end, he can do better. That's how active learning is useful in ensuring that students do well in the exams. Now, in active learning, we said earlier that seeing and hearing is not enough. Is not enough means what? So, the point here is that brain is not like an audio or a visual tape recorder, that you keep on recording something. It's not only recording, it's also understanding what is being done. So, it does not stop at just listening to it, but it is little beyond. So, since the brain is not like a recorder, they just put in the information, it goes into that bucket and the bucket is filled. While the information goes into the bucket, it is also understood. It is analyzed inside by the brain and it is mapped with the other topics which the student already knows. And every person knows something different. It's not that everyone has the same knowledge. So I know something, some other teacher here will know something else. Now whatever I know, based on that I will understand what you are telling me. So the knowledge which is going to come into the bucket is associated and related with the other information which the student already has. And that's how he is going to learn and remember. So here we say brain is not an ordinary recorder, but the brain is going to act like have an opportunity to analyze that information together. So the incoming information which comes into the bucket is processed and the brain will start asking questions like, have I heard this before? Have I seen this before? And very often if you go back and look at your examples and say, okay, I saw a particular triangle. Yeah, I have seen this before, I remember it. I saw something similar, I remember it. And another example I can take is, you meet some friend on the road and you have spoken to him one month back. Now today again you meet him. Oh, how are you? I met you last time. You relate it. You relate it to 1 month back when you met him. So, the information, when I see the student, when I see the person today, when I see my friend today, I remember him and I try to relate him to what I saw 1 month back. So I have processed this information. Who did it? In the brain. So the brain is going to pick up the image of today, try to find out related image of 1 month back. If the brain could remember it, then it will process it together and compare. And then say that yes, I remember what was done earlier. I remember last month I saw you. And last month you were there. So I remember you and today again I am seeing you after so long. After so long is the information which has come from the brain because it is processed. So the information like, have I heard this before? Have I seen this before? And that is going to relate to what I do today. Where does this information fit in? What can I do with it? Can I make it useful? Can I do something now because of what I know from earlier? And can I assume that this is the same thing? I saw somebody last time, this person looks similar. So is it the same person or is it somebody different? Is this particular concept that I am learning today same as what was taught earlier? Now, was it what I was taught say maybe yesterday or maybe last month or maybe last year? So whatever knowledge is there in the brain and is retained in the bucket, and when new knowledge comes in, it is processed and associated together. That is where I told you that when I learn something today, when I read something today, I try to remember that do I know something before, and I relate it together. So when these two topics are related together in the brain, that is where actual processing is happening. And with this particular processing concept of what I know, what I see today and what I know earlier is put in together and combined to understand the topic of today. And that is how every subject is learnt by the students, and within a subject a particular topic is learnt by the students. And that is how the knowledge volume of the student keeps on growing larger and larger. And the more he learns, we say the student is very intelligent. What is intelligence? It is coming because his bucket is big, and whatever new comes in, he will associate quickly with the knowledge which is there and say, yes, this is together and I remember it. And everything is remembered. There is no tap from which the information is flowing out. And he will not forget anything. So here, active classroom is a place where active learning is going to happen. And how is that going to be there? So in an active classroom, a teacher is going to give opportunities for information to be better processed. Now you see the sentence how it comes in. You have to make the students do activities in such a way that he processes more information than what I give him. So I teach less, I make the students work. What actually I'm making the students do? I'm making him process more information in his brain. So in the bucket, you remember? In the bucket, whatever information is there and the knowledge is there, I want him to process it more and more. I make him process so much that I give him little and I make him associate it with the whole bucket information so that he will not forget what he is learning. And that's the entire job of the teacher. And that is an active classroom. So, if you imagine an active classroom is buzzing with noise. Students are talking here and there, but they are talking on the topic which you have given, not something else, because you want an answer from them later. And it's buzzing with noise, people are thinking, people are talking, people are asking questions, and you can move around the entire class and somebody will ask you something, and then you may say, okay, this is a question which is important, which you should know the answer. You don't answer it. You go and ask somebody else, can you answer it? So make him come out on the dais with you, make him explain to everyone. You know the slide which I told you about Confucius and Silberman? You make the student teach somebody, he will master it. So nobody says a teacher can't teach. A teacher is given that position because he is capable of teaching. So as a teacher, you are not tested whether you know the topic or not. But when you make somebody come out and say, and make him teach everyone else, you are making him a master of that particular topic, he'll be more confident. Next time you can call somebody else, and then if that particular topic still everybody has not understood, then maybe you explain it again in some other words. So it's more a question of how to get the students active and make the classroom active with activities where students are doing something on their own, you make them work, and this entire process is called as active learning. And active learning is where you will have an environment where students are creating something, applying something, teaching somebody else, evaluating it. And the entire environment now becomes a bustling place of people talking to each other, asking questions, having ideas, thinking of something, why not that, why not this, can I use it somewhere, and coming out with something they want to do on their own. And when they do something on their own, they are going to learn that topic and they will be more enriched with the information which they have learnt from the environment. So it's more about a teacher to create that lively environment in the class by motivating them and making them do something on their own. And instead of the teacher giving all the things to do, you can also ask students, what do you want to do? What do you think? Can you think of something which you want to work on? And let me tell you, students will come back with many different ideas. Some of them will be good, and you can use them to make this particular classroom become an active classroom instead of just being a passive classroom. So if we go further and look at this particular small slide, which gives a very small example and a very nice example of the different active learning techniques. So what exactly is an active learning technique? As I told you earlier in one of the first slides, togetherness. Teachers and students need to be together, take a step ahead and help each other. So here, just see the small slide where it talks about, three people have a bamboo and they want to cross over from one part of the place to the other part, and there is no steps in between. So how do they do? So since all of them are together and they want to do it together, they two of them hold the bamboo tightly, so the third one is in between without any support. Now there's another part here. The person in the middle here, I'll call him as A, B and C. So the person A is trusting that the remaining two people will never leave the bamboo till I cross and move to this other point. You see the confidence he has and the trust he has on the remaining two people, and he's sure of them. And the moment they start going a little further, the person A comes in front, then person B comes in between. Now the person B is also confident and trusting person A and C that both of you are on two opposite sides, I am in the middle, I don't have any support, but I rely on you to make me go across. And in the third slide you can see person A and B are on one side of with the bamboo tightly handled, and person C is outside without any support. But he is holding the bamboo tightly and waiting, and he knows that somehow A and B are going to ensure that I will also be reaching on the other side. Now see the trust level which is there. The point here I wanted to make was two things. One is helping each other out and to cross over. There is no choice. They're not going to think, okay, there's nothing here, what do I do, how do I cross, how do I go? So the entire subject which is assigned to the teacher is like a task where you have teachers and students on one side, and all of them have to cross over and learn that particular topic completely. So the students and the teachers need to trust each other. You need to build that rapport on day one, in week one, in month one, and interact in such a way by giving respect, by giving some small tasks, by making them getting involved and engaged so that they listen to you, they trust you. And once the entire student team is going to trust you, they will start doing what you are told. So your person A is told that don't worry, you go in between, we two are behind, we are going to help you. So same way here, I am here to help you as a teacher. We are going to go on this journey together and you have to trust me. So you need to have a trust relationship built right in the week one. And you need to work on it by giving some examples, by giving with your tone, with your body language, by listening to them and seeing some problems which you can solve for them and make them comfortable. See, for example, I'll say like this, that for example, you finish around 2 months of the course, and then many of the other teachers in the other subjects have also given many assignments to them, and you also end up giving an assignment. So if 4 assignments the students have to do just in 3-4 days, how will you do it? And the students will look at you and they'll have that negative feeling, and you can see that body language that they are pressured. One more assignment has come. How will I do it? Now, moment you sense it, if you can tell the students what is happening, what is happening, why don't you want to do it, and they have a reason for it. So they may tell you that we have 3 subjects and now there also assignments are given and we have to finish all within just 2 days or 3 days. It's not possible. How do we do it? And the moment that comes to you, are you willing to listen to them and say, okay, you have 3, let me not give you 1, I'll give you a little later. That's where listening comes in, that's where empathy comes in, and that's where the teacher knows that you are standing there as a strong support to make them do something conveniently and mutually, not just because you want it. I could also have told that okay, 3 assignments are there, fine, you have to do 1 more. You have to do it together. Nothing doing. So, what is the message which goes in? That she never understands, she is not interested, and she has decided somehow we'll have to do it. What's the best way to do it? By any shortcut, assignment will be done. It may be blankly copied, somehow dumped and completed. Your objective of making them do it on their own properly and learning is not achieved. Useless. So it's better that when you want to get something to be done by the students, find out whether it is possible for them to do or not, and only then assign it. And sometimes they may have genuine problems, and we need to understand, we need to acknowledge it and accordingly redesign something, but ensure that they are comfortable doing it. But if you do just blankly put the pressure and don't look at their point of view, then there will be small gaps in how your work will be carried out. You will not get the same quality, and it will not be done in the same spirit also. So that care has to be taken. So this was the main point I wanted to show from this particular slide, that it's a question of 2 things together. One is assigning the tasks. The second part is the trust level. If the trust level between the teacher and the student is balanced and they both listen to each other, they both trust each other, then they will listen, they will cooperate, they will support each other, and then they will grow. Because if there is no cooperation, then the way the things will happen in the future will be not in the right direction, and it will hamper the teaching learning process. So that is very important to note. Let's now look at various active learning techniques. So we all agree that passive learning is not good, active learning is required, and active learning needs to be done. And it is very important in today's generation, which are digital learners. So what are the different ways in which we can do active learning? Now, unfortunately, in this particular session of active learning which I am giving you, I cannot use examples of active learning with you because you are only listening to this particular recording. But if all of you were sitting in the class, the scenario would have been entirely different. I would have used all these techniques of active learning to make you understand that yes, it is possible and you should implement various strategies for active learning. So the first method, some of the few methods, where we can involve students and make them work is the first point which is given here, restate information. You give a particular concept, then you ask them to restate it in a different way. What will happen? Students will start thinking because they have to think about have they understood or not, which part they have understood, and they will word it in their own way and speak to you or give it to you. So restating is one part. Second is ask them to analyze information. So you give them something and say, and then say, okay, do you think it is right? So for example, in the starting I asked you a particular question that when teachers are going to talk, what will happen to retention? Retention will dash. I asked you to analyze it. So when you analyze what will happen? You start thinking. You start thinking that okay, if somebody is going to speak in front, what will happen to retention? Maybe 15 minutes, 20 minutes, you are able to listen. But after that, slowly, concentration is going to go down. And once the concentration goes down, learning also goes down. It's only you are talking, other one is hearing. The tap is going to be open, slowly knowledge is going to flow out. And it's all bye-bye to the knowledge. Nothing remains in the bucket of the brain. So now, we talked about restate of information, we talked about analysis of information. We can also ask students to give examples. So for example, I give a topic like students are very digital learners today. So what are the different ways in which they learn digitally? And you would give examples like, email, blog, wikis, videos, YouTube, WhatsApp, etc. So you can ask students to give examples. You can also ask students to recognize some instances. This particular event happened. What do you think happened over here? What did not happen well? You can also make students make and see connections. What is make and see connection? It's asking them to make it relevant to something. One of the examples of adult learners feature was given, that relevancy. So relevancy makes a lot of difference. So you can make the students see a connection with something else, related to something else. Say for example, I want to say that this the wall in this particular room, my backdrop is yellow in color and there are white holes on the top. So can I say that it's yellow in color, but if you don't relate yellow to something, I say okay, that particular the poster is yellow in color. So you are connecting it, and when you connect it, it is related to each other. This particular book is yellow in color, or this particular pen is yellow in color. It's little golden, but I'll say it is yellow in color. So I'm relating it to the backdrop behind, and I wanted to explain about the backdrop. That's a wall behind me, but I'm giving the example of a pen over here. So you are relating it. So you make students do a connection with something which they know earlier, or which is in front. I showed you in front, but it could also have something which is, they have seen it earlier. So I can say something like this. Last time I showed you that yellow colored book. Now that yellow color is same as this yellow color behind. So I'm asking you to relate and remember last week something which you saw in yellow. So that is retention. So you make the students see connections. You also can ask them to apply a concept somewhere. Okay, so for example, in this particular topic which I gave you, I can say that, okay, I have explained to you how to take a test. Now, go and practice it. Go and use it somewhere. Go and ask a question to your friend. So that becomes applying a concept. So when we talk about different techniques of active learning, what can we ask the students to do? I gave a few examples now. I said restate, analyze, give example, recognize instances, make them see a connection, or make them apply a concept somewhere. So these are some of the methods which you can ask students to do to make learning active and to make the classroom become an active classroom. A few more examples are here. You can also ask them to predict a consequence. What exactly this means? Now, predict a consequence means something like this, that I ask you to visualize what will happen if, you just understand this concept? What will happen if? It is not there. I ask you to predict it. So I give an example in terms of teaching learning that like this, that I have a particular lecture today and it is going to be there for 20 minutes. What will happen if I continue for 30 minutes? Now the assigned time is 20 minutes. I'm asking you to go for 30 minutes. I'm asking you to predict the consequence of the impact of taking 10 minutes extra. So you have to start thinking, because you can't imagine, standard, but this is something beyond that. So you predict a sequence. The next part in this is state, converse or contrast. You try to give them a point and ask them to say converse of it or contrast of it. But when you ask them to give something contrast, then they start thinking of the worst and the best. So in the example of teaching active learning, if I say the students who are very sincere and the students who are insincere, can we make two groups and give a list of all the characteristics of sincere students and insincere students? You look at the contrast, and the moment that comes on paper, students will say, okay, I don't want to be like that, I want to be here. So the choice of becoming a better student comes from their side, instead of the teacher saying that be like this or be like that. The other point which we can look at here is partner discussion. I give an example of that earlier, where I said somebody knows something, you ask that student to teach the other student. So that is partnering a discussion. The next point is ask the student to justify something. Why do you think it is like this? Why can't we do it in a different way? So the moment we ask the student to justify something, he needs to think about it. He needs to think of the perfect answers for that, and then he needs to speak it out. And he can't just give a random answer. Say for example, in this particular session of active learning, if I ask you as a teacher that I would like you to follow this particular method, now you justify what will be the impact on the students. You're not doing it right now, but you will have to think about the impact. You'll have to imagine that you're sitting in a class, you are teaching, and you're using some active learning concepts, and then what will happen to the students. So you have to justify, if you use this particular method, will it be beneficial or will it impact the students in the negative way? So you have to vision it out, you have to think about it, you have to imagine it. You create that scenario and then you think of the impact. So I am not thinking in this case, the student has to start thinking of this particular situation. And the last and the most important thing in the class is to enable the students to summarize the activity of whatever is learned in the entire time. So instead of you telling everything 1, 2, 3, 4, this is what I did, you can ask them, I did some of these things. Now can we recap on some of the points? Can we revise them again? Which topic was difficult? Can we quickly define it again? Can we give an example of that again? So that's how summary will help all the students to recap everything what is learnt. They also know that this particular topic here, nobody understood. Maybe you could assign that, come back the next time and explain to everyone so that everybody understands in the classroom. So this is how your process of active learning can continue with students getting involved, not just the teacher talking in the class. So the point in the slide here is, if you look at these active learning techniques, learning is improved when students are asked to do something with the information. So you give the information, you ask students to process it, not in their own way directly, but in different ways. So with these techniques of predicting, restating, contrasting, discussions, etc., you make the students to do something with the information, and when they process the information, learning will be done because students get involved and they'll remember everything. Apart from the techniques which I told you that was just in the classroom, there are very specific techniques which are relevant to different